So I'd like you all to think back to your initial meetings. And Portland Elementary had a long-standing relationship with the University of Louisville, but you did spend a year with only a supervisor, but not a university liaison. John, you had been asked to work with the school in the liaison role. And what were your initial thoughts about establishing a working relationship together with the school and the principal and the faculty? And specifically, how did you cultivate that relationship during that first year?
Well, it was an initial meeting in July or August, and I had been here with another representative from the university, and we were looking at how we were going to have a university supervisor here back again at Portland. And I don't know how my name came up, but it did at the table. And so I had never thought of coming to Portland as a university supervisor, although coming to a school as a university supervisor was on the horizon. And so I was a bit apprehensive at first because of my past life as administrator. But I was excited too because I had been out of the school for 3 years in retirement. And so I missed the kids, I missed being in school, I missed being with the teachers. And so the apprehension was, because of my past life, I knew that if I would say yes as the university supervisor at Portland, I would have to keep my administrative hat someplace else because Angela's the administrator. And so that was the concern. Could I do that? And so because I knew that saying yes as the university supervisor, she's the administrator, I'm the supervisor, I can't put on that administrative hat. And so, but the exciting part was working with Angela, who I had a history with. We had done some professional development in the past, so I was familiar with Angela, the faculty, the school, and the kinds of work that was happening here. It was exciting stuff, and I also missed being around the kids, so it was that, you know, that pull, that tug of, yes, I want to do it, but can I leave the administration hat, which is hard to do after 19 years. But working with Angela has been absolutely wonderful, and she makes it easy to leave that hat in the street and come in here and work with her as the university supervisor representing U of L.
So Angela, can you talk a bit about your role in terms of cultivating relationships with university liaisons in general, and then John in particular?
Well, when we met and talked about it, and like John said, we spent that year with him coming in as in the supervisor role. So we'd worked through that structure and had some encounters where I could bounce ideas off of him, and we seemed to have that hand in glove fit where we could talk, and we could talk curriculum, we could talk instruction, we could talk about the aspects of the school because he had come from a similar school, and talk in terms of how do we move teachers as learners, how do we move the school as a learning environment. And like I said, there was that natural hand in glove fit that was moving the system that was in place. I've always cultivated the concept here in the school that we as teachers are learners, that education is a science as much as it is an art. And it seemed as John came in as the supervisor with his students, he was cultivating that with them as well. So as we talked and worked together, we were already nurturing that concept from both directions. And it was interesting, that hand in glove fit. And how do you move that to a higher level? So when we talked about the working relationship together, it seemed to start flowing. So when we came to the table and it was talking about the next steps, because Portland couldn't continue in the structure without a liaison. If we're going to continue in the model where we're nurturing teachers and pre-service teachers, we had to have a stronger fit and have that support in place where we are cultivating a reciprocal relationship. So we needed someone that could facilitate and bring about enhancing the structure, and we already could feel that John had that same philosophical viewpoint. So I just immediately across the table said, "Why don't we do it?" Because at that point I didn't want it to flounder. And the neat aspect about it was I needed enhancement for my learning. And that reciprocality could grow in that respect as well.
For the school to get to know me, that because I knew that the question was, who is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
He's a past administrator, he's a past teacher, he's also representing the University of Louisville, so what's his purpose? And so last year, especially with the teachers, I needed to spend a lot of time with them and build trust, build a bond between us. And then at the same time, we had to continue to nurture our relationship as colleagues.
And so one of the things I think about, and it sounds like you both are very aware of boundaries and how and roles and responsibilities with respect, and you cross over and think about things together. But as this relationship continues to grow and the university, and has been strengthened, how do you two work together to identify what you need from one another, from school, from university, and vice versa? And you both have touched on it a little bit. And how do you respond to those needs to move your work forward? So it's really about communication.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start, only to pick up where I left off before, because I think that most of last year, for me anyway, needed to be about continuing to grow our professional relationship, because we need to establish trust with one another. Because we've worked together in the past, we knew of each other, we knew of each other's work, but there wasn't that strong foundational trust factor as colleagues, as professionals. So Angela needed to be able to trust me, and I needed to be able to trust her as a colleague. And we've had a lot of what goes on in the Portland table stays at the Portland table conversations. We talk about the faculty and their environments, and we've got to talk about the faculty and their environments shy of, confidential information. And the reason we need to do that is because our students are being placed in those classroom environments to learn from the best. By the same token, she needs to talk to the teachers so we can make a natural fit. I've got to have conversations with her about some of the students. So there had to be that foundational trust factor. And that's pretty much what we did last year as colleagues.
I spent a lot of time, as this process has grown, just understanding what I viewed as a clinical model. And my view of it is both that the university students are clients, my teachers are clients to me, and my students are clients to me. And when I look at that three-prong wheel, I've worked over time to think about what that structure is. How do I make sure that I have systems in place to meet the needs of the clients, of the university student clients, and that they're giving back to both my teachers and to my students? How am I making sure that my teachers' needs are met from the university and from me? And then how do I make sure that all of us are giving to the students? And I think the way that John came in, which is we're trained as principals to do, come in and observe, just like he said, eyes wide open, mind open, making sure you're getting the lay of the land. He was very intentional, and it was very observable by me. He was making sure he got to know how the leadership team worked, how the systems of communication worked, the structures of how the teams were laid out, how the teams communicated, how the office communicated with the staff, how I communicated with. Mm-hmm. He was very intentional. So that wouldn't be typical when I've worked with just university personnel that's not typical school personnel. So he had that perspective. So that was a different way of structuring a client relationship with student teachers or pre-service teachers, with my teachers, and then ultimately with my students. So he was able to come in then, and as he observed and built relationships with me and then with all of the staff, he gained credibility with office staff, custodial staff, cafeteria staff, because he did first honor the structures that are in place, but then became a part of those structures. And through doing that, the relationships grew, so that then we were able to talk about, he was able to interact with the Goal Clarity coach, the teams, and then we were able to have those conversations, because I do feel very committed that we have to communicate, just like he said. A pre-service teacher is a client, and I'm committed to making sure that the teacher that client works with can go from their strengths and lift them up and be able to provide what they need to grow from that, but also observe and learn what needs to grow. Sometimes that's with that exact same teacher, but sometimes it's conversations of where they might need to go spend a week here or there, or make a complete move. But also it's reciprocal, because the teacher that's with them has to also gain some type of experience as well. That teacher has to gain in their ability to reflect on their practice. And if there's not that coaching experience with him coming as a supervisor, able to either walk that teacher who's new to that position with a pre-service teacher, or him coaching, for example, our new teacher in residence to do that, then the whole structure is not reciprocal, and all clients aren't being lifted, and ultimately the students not being lifted. And John was very purposeful in making sure that whole wheel was turning. And it seemed, as we talked, we purposely would go, and the structure just went deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right. And nothing happens in the building until we do talk.
Right.
Yeah. We talk about everything before we move forward in our work. I never commit to anything. If I'm working with the coaches, I never commit to anything. We have to get Angela in on this. She needs to be informed. She needs to be told. She needs to be asked. Have we asked Angela about this? We need to, before we move forward, because she's the leader in the building. She's the instructional leader. So everything has to go through her. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is we're pretty intentional about how we place our students, not just in the classroom, but our third semester students, the method students that come into the building, which is the semester right before student teaching. We're selective. Because we're a pilot model, meaning that the third semester method students come into the building, they stay here for their student teaching semester. That in mind, Angela meets all of those that we've selected at the university level in an interview-like situation. And I won't commit for them to be here at Portland until she gives the okay, that she's met them, and I'm giving the go-ahead for them to come into Portland Elementary. And we started that, last year? And so that's worked out really well. And then we negotiate what would be a best placement for these third semester method students, and then folding into their student teaching year. Who would be the best model for them?
It's clear that the two of you have bonded professionally, and as you're talking, I hear some tenets coming out in terms of what makes this professional relationship so successful. And it seems like communication, as well as a respect for, I don't like the term chain of command, but if you think about just structures, right? That these structures are in place, and this remembering the deference towards the school and the administration first, because we're guests here, and as collaborative as things are, ultimately this is still the school that you are the principal of, and so are there other tenets that you think that you hold on to around this relationship that you think are important for other institutions to know?
Well, I think we've already mentioned one. One is trust. You have to have that trust factor between the school and the university and whoever represents that. You have to have a relationship, and that comes from trust. You have to have that professional relationship, and collegiality comes out of that. So that we're all going in the same direction using the stakeholders that we have available to us. We all have the same purpose. The purpose is to focus on the little kids in this elementary school. We want to move their academic abilities, their achievement forward. And so the question becomes, how are we going to do that together? Because Angela is also responsible for moving her faculty forward in order to move the little kids forward, and I'm responsible for moving the pre-service teachers forward. So how do we make that happen together? That comes through, I think another tenet is the communication. I think we have great communication. And a lot of our best ideas come because we talk.
And I think it's also just that vision of education being lifelong. And so if you view that impact just of the premise of, on one hand, U of L is guest, but on the other hand, it's just my personal vision that all of it is giving back. If the pre-service teachers come, and Portland in itself we're a tough school. We're 96.8% free lunch, and we're also a dynamic school. I'll brag a little. The teachers here work hard, they're passionate, they're very well trained. So a lot of energy and work has been put in to raise the teachers to the level that they're at. However, we're always under that premise that we're continuously learning. So by bringing in the pre-service teachers who are receiving the latest, greatest research-based knowledge, they're bringing that to our staff from university personnel who are bringing the latest, greatest. Yet they're meeting, from that clinical model, the hands-on moment in time experiences. And as John said, he's hearing from me and hearing from my teachers, and in time, this is what's happening now. He takes back in his classes and to the university personnel, this is what they're saying is happening. So that university personnel then take back and do the research again. We are giving back to the community, preparing these teachers to either come work here, come work in our community, be ready and prepared for next year's generation of kiddos. But I'm passionate about that because we have to lift our children up, and in my opinion, who better to do that than my teachers that we're grooming, and watch my teachers grow as they learn to reflect on their practice, because that's what makes them better teachers. So, and it makes me a better principal as I interact and learn and continue to learn and reflect with John, and I reflect with my teachers. We continue and we model. What better example of learning? What better example can we give? And it seemed as we talked, we purposely would go, and the structure just went deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right. And nothing happens in the building until we do talk.
Right.
Yeah. We talk about everything before we move forward in our work. I never commit to anything. If I'm working with the coaches, I never commit to anything. We have to get Angela in on this. She needs to be informed. She needs to be told. She needs to be asked. Have we asked Angela about this? We need to, before we move forward, because she's the leader in the building. She's the instructional leader, so everything has to go through her. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is we're pretty intentional about how we place our students, not just in the classroom, but our third semester students, the method students that come into the building, which is the semester right before student teaching. We're selective. Because we're a pilot model, meaning that the third semester method students come into the building, they stay here for their student teaching semester. That in mind, Angela meets all of those that we've selected at the university level in an interview-like situation. And I won't commit for them to be here at Portland until she gives the okay, that she's met them, and I'm giving the go-ahead for them to come into Portland Elementary. And we started that, last year? And so that's worked out really well. And then we negotiate what would be a best placement for these third semester method students, and then folding into their student teaching here. Who would be the best model for them?
It's clear that the two of you have bonded professionally, and as you're talking, I hear some tenets coming out in terms of what makes this professional relationship so successful. And it seems like communication, as well as a respect for, like, I don't like the term chain of command, but if you think about just structures, right? That these structures are in place, and this remembering the deference towards the school and the administration first, because we're guests here, and as collaborative as things are, ultimately this is still the school that you are the principal of, and so are there other tenets that you think that you hold on to around this relationship that you think are important for other institutions to know?
Well, I think we've already mentioned one. One is trust. You have to have that trust factor between the school and the university and whoever represents that. You have to have a relationship, and that comes from trust. You have to have that professional relationship, and collegiality comes out of that, so that we're all going in the same direction using the stakeholders that we have available to us. We all have the same purpose. The purpose is to focus on the little kids in this elementary school. We want to move their academic abilities, their achievement forward. And so the question becomes, how are we going to do that together? Because Angela is also responsible for moving her faculty forward in order to move the little kids forward, and I'm responsible for moving the pre-service teachers forward. So how do we make that happen together? Probably the thing I'm most excited about is when I went to Angela and I said, how can we help? And her comment last spring, it was, we need writing. And so we've been working collaboratively in the area of writing probably for the last year. We brought in a Soki, so we started that, giving the teachers the experiences. But I'm working, again, with Angela's permission, and I said, hey, do you mind if I work with the Goal Clarity Coach and Literacy Coach on the writing plan? And so I wouldn't do anything with the coaches. We really didn't even talk about it until I had your permission to do that. And so I'm excited to work with Amy, the Goal Clarity Coach, and Krista, the Literacy Coach, and now Sarah as the teacher in residence, to work out this 3-year plan. But the exciting piece is that as administrators in your building, we're kind of formulating a plan, but I'm working with them to work with the faculty so that it's a grassroots effort. So the teachers, the entire faculty is in on the formation of this plan. As you can see, their work pretty much started here with formulating those ideas. And so they're helping us develop this plan. We created the framework, but we're revising it at this table. And so I'm thankful that she's allowing me to help her move the school forward in that area. So I think that's really exciting.
And our teacher in residence just hit the road running. She actually just started a month ago, basically. I guess it's been 2 months, two months. And we're seeing right away that some of the work with the pre-service teachers that are that work in the classroom on Mondays, they're in whole class all day, and then they spend either a half day or whole day in the classroom. When they express needs, when the classroom teacher express needs, where they come in and the teacher is struggling articulating the needs to support the pre-service teacher, the teacher in residence can come in and she will coach the classroom teacher on how to have the conversation with the pre-service teacher. And we've already had a couple incidents which we met for a debrief just early this week, talking about how that went. And it's just the prime example of the teacher developing the reflection skills and how to articulate their work. So another level of some younger teachers learning that articulation of their work, which will grow them into later becoming mentor teachers. So we're very excited to have a new layer to that process of support for our younger teachers, that teacher in residence is able to fulfill, because we all know that when we're able to articulate our work, that will grow those younger teachers even quicker.